The hallway smelled like fresh coffee and copier toner, the familiar scent of routine. But that morning, nothing felt routine. At 9 a.m. sharp, I stood outside the glass-paneled office of Elaine Mercer, Vice President of Ridgefield Strategies, the company I had given 6 years of my life. Her assistant's eyes barely met mine when she opened the door. "Come in, Jordan. She's waiting." My name is Jordan Blake. I'm 32 years old, a senior account manager, or I was, until about 7 minutes after stepping into that room. Elaine didn't look up as I entered. She sat behind a desk that seemed to stretch half the length of the room, tapping a printed email with her French manicured nail. "I consider this a breach of trust," she said coolly, "after all this company has done for you." I stood frozen, heart pounding, as she laid out the reason I'd been summoned. She knew I had interviewed at Easton Company, our biggest competitor. She'd found out through someone in HR, apparently tipped off by my half-day dental appointment. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. 6 years of early mornings, impossible deadlines, and landing million-dollar clients. All of it meant nothing now. "I wasn't planning to leave without giving notice," I said, my voice tight. Elaine didn't blink. "Security will escort you to your desk. Please collect your personal items. You no longer represent Ridgefield Strategies." That was the moment I realized. I hadn't just been let go. I had been erased. No exit interview, no thank you. Just a badge slid across a glossy desk like an afterthought. As I walked out with my small box of belongings, framed photos, 2 awards no one cared about, and a stress cactus, I felt an odd sense of calm. Not relief, not anger, something deeper. Like I had been holding my breath for 6 years and finally exhaled. I stepped into the sunlight, the spring air brushing my face. A message lit up on my phone from Darren Wells, CEO of Easton Company. "Can you come in at 3 p.m. today to talk next steps?" Elaine had fired me, thinking she was cutting off my future. But she hadn't ended my story. She'd just closed the wrong chapter. How many years have we given quietly, believing loyalty would protect us, only to learn too late that it doesn't? At what point do we stop waiting to be valued and begin choosing to value ourselves? I joined Ridgefield Strategies the way many fresh graduates do, wide-eyed, eager, and willing to do whatever it took to prove myself. With a marketing degree from the University of Oregon and zero industry experience, I stepped into the building not expecting a title, just a chance. At first, I was the one fetching coffee, color-coding presentation decks, and staying late to transcribe meeting notes no one would read twice. I wasn't bothered. I told myself this was how everyone started. I believed deeply in the promise that hard work would be noticed, that loyalty would eventually pay off. By the end of my first year, I had learned how to read between clients' silences, to hear the hesitation in their tone before they ever said no, and to revise campaigns in record time without being asked twice. I made mistakes, sure, but I also fixed them quietly, and I didn't ask for credit. In year 2, I was given a handful of difficult accounts, small clients no one else wanted to deal with. They were demanding, unpredictable, and rarely satisfied. But I nurtured those accounts the way someone tends to a neglected garden, with patience, attention, and care. They stayed. Some of them even grew. One of them introduced me to Darren Wells, the CEO of Easton Company. The first meeting with Darren was a disaster waiting to happen. His previous account manager had missed a major campaign deadline, one that could have cost the entire contract. I stepped in last minute, rebuilt the campaign strategy in under 48 hours, and pitched it to Darren personally. After a long silence, he said, "You're the only person who's understood what we need without me having to spell it out." That meeting changed everything. Easton Company quickly became Ridgefield's largest account, responsible for nearly 30% of our yearly revenue. And I became their go-to, Jordan Blake, the account manager who pulled off miracles without breaking a sweat. Elaine Mercer, our VP, had praised me then. This is the kind of initiative we reward, she'd said. But rewards, apparently, didn't come in the form of compensation. After that success, I submitted my first formal request for a raise. I came prepared, with data, client testimonials, and financial reports that clearly demonstrated the growth I had driven. Elaine smiled and said, "It's not in the budget this year, but your contribution is noted." I believed her. The following year, I brought in 3 new major clients and won a regional award for creative strategy. I tried again. The answer was the same. Next year will be better. We just need to tighten our belts for a little longer. Meanwhile, Elaine arrived in a brand new luxury SUV. The company leased an entire new floor of office space. But my salary? It hadn't changed since my first year in management. 6 months before my firing, I renegotiated Easton's contract to increase their annual spend by 40%. I knew what I was worth. I asked again. "Your performance is exceptional," Elaine said, "but this year we're focused on infrastructure." That night, I updated my resume for the first time in 6 years. Not out of spite, not out of anger, but because I finally saw the truth. Loyalty, without recognition, is just a slow form of self-erasure. I had traded my voice for stability, my self-worth for a company's approval, and I wasn't willing to make that trade anymore. The night I updated my resume felt like betrayal, not of Ridgefield strategies, but of the version of myself that had clung to loyalty like a security blanket. For years, I had believed that staying put, being dependable, and outperforming expectations would eventually be rewarded. But that night, staring at the blinking cursor on my laptop, I accepted a truth that burned. Some companies don't reward loyalty, they exploit it. I didn't hit submit to any jobs right away. It took me another 2 weeks to work up the nerve. Even then, I was selective. I wasn't interested in just leaving, I wanted to grow. If I was going to move on, it had to be somewhere that saw me, not just the revenue I could bring in. When I applied to Easton Company, it wasn't out of desperation. It was a strategic move. I'd already spent 3 years managing their account, anticipating their needs, and translating their brand into campaigns that won awards. I knew their voice better than some of their in-house staff, so I emailed Darren Wells directly, attaching my updated resume and a short note. "If there's ever a place for someone who understands your brand from the inside out, I'd be honored to have a conversation." His reply came within the hour. "Let's talk." We scheduled a casual lunch for the following week. We spoke openly, not as vendor and client, but as 2 professionals who had long respected each other's work. He asked me about my vision, what I'd do differently if I were leading a team. I told him the truth. I'd build an environment where people didn't have to beg for what they already earned. I left that lunch energized. Darren hadn't made an offer, but the door was open. It felt good to know someone out there actually saw my value. That Thursday, I took a half day, officially marked as a dental appointment, and met with Easton's HR and 2 of their senior VPs. The interview was formal but friendly. They weren't just interested in hiring me. They were curious what I wanted from the next stage of my career. By Friday, I felt like something had shifted. I didn't have a job offer yet, but I felt closer to possibility than I had in years. Then came Tuesday. At 9 a.m. sharp, I was called into Elaine's office. The moment I walked in, I knew something was off. The blinds were closed. Her assistant avoided eye contact. Elaine sat behind her monolithic desk, tapping a printed email. "I consider this disloyal," she said, her voice sharp as glass. I barely had time to respond before she continued. "You took a half day for a dental appointment last Thursday. We have confirmation you interviewed with Easton Company. That's a conflict of interest, and frankly, a violation of the trust this company placed in you." I froze. So this was it. She'd found out. "Elaine, I was planning to give my notice properly," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I haven't accepted anything yet. I wanted to do this the right way." Her expression didn't change. "Your building access has been revoked. IT has already disabled your company email. Security will escort you to your desk. I couldn't speak. 6 years. 6 years of overtime, missed holidays, last-minute client rescues, and I was being removed like a trespasser. My legs moved on autopilot as I followed the guard to my desk. My coworkers peeked from behind monitors, eyes wide. No one said a word. I packed my things in silence, framed photos, notebooks full of strategy notes, the tiny cactus that had survived 5 desk relocations. It all fit in one cardboard box. It's funny how a career can shrink to a few square feet. As I stepped out into the parking lot, the spring sun hit my face. The warmth didn't reach the pit in my stomach. I felt numb, not broken, not angry, just hollow. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Darren. "Can we move our final conversation to this afternoon, say 3 p.m.? I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I smiled. Elaine had thought she was cutting me down. She didn't realize she was setting me free. At home, I placed the box on my kitchen counter. The silence in the apartment rang louder than any boardroom. I sat down on a stool and let the shock wash over me. I wasn't just between meetings. I wasn't on vacation. I was unemployed. For the first time in years, I had no title, no performance metrics, no late-night email threads. And yet, I wasn't scared. I was relieved. Not because I had been fired, but because now I had nothing left to lose. The worst had already happened. Now I could choose what came next. I arrived at Easton Company's downtown office 15 minutes early, dressed in my best navy blue suit. It was the one I usually reserved for pitching big clients. But today, I wasn't pitching a brand. I was presenting myself. The building itself was a reflection of everything Ridgefield wasn't. Modern, spacious, full of light. The lobby featured floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the city skyline like a painting. Polished concrete floors met soft seating areas where collaboration seemed as natural as conversation. Darren Wells was waiting for me just past the reception area. He greeted me with a smile and a handshake that felt genuine, not performative. "Glad you could make it, Jordan," he said, motioning for me to follow him through a hallway lined with marketing awards and campaign case studies. Unlike the icy formality I'd come to associate with executive offices, Darren's corner suite was warm and functional. No gold nameplates or intimidating conference tables, just 2 chairs angled toward a low table and a tray with coffee already prepared. "Cream and 1 sugar, right?" he asked. I nodded. Slightly stunned, he remembered something so small. "Let's get into it," he said, settling into the chair across from me. "I spoke with HR this morning. They were very impressed by your interviews. And frankly, so am I. So this won't be an interview, it's a job offer." He slid a slim folder across the table. I opened it slowly, heart pounding harder with every second. Director of Client Strategy. The title jumped out first, followed by the salary figure, nearly double what I had been making at Ridgefield. And beneath that, a generous benefits package, a signing bonus, and a note about building a team of 5 to support Easton's external marketing relationships. My breath caught in my throat. "This is more than fair," I said carefully, still trying to process it. "It's market rate," Darren replied, leaning back slightly. "You've been managing our largest account for years, without the title or the pay. We want to make sure you're not just joining us, but stepping into a role where your impact is recognized from day one." It wasn't just the offer. It was the way he said recognized, as if he understood, without needing the full backstory, just how unseen I had felt at Ridgefield. "I'd like to review everything overnight, if that's all right," I said, even though I already knew my answer. "Of course, I expected as much," he said, smiling. "You're thorough, Jordan. It's one of the things we admire most about you." When I left the building, the sun had begun to dip low across the skyline, casting soft shadows over the city. But everything in me felt brighter, as if the weight of the past 6 years had been quietly lifted. That night, I laid the offer packet on my kitchen table and stared at it for a long time. My phone buzzed constantly. Texts from former colleagues, whispers about my firing, guesses about where I might land next. I ignored them all. I wasn't interested in gossip. I was interested in peace. Then came a text from Thomas, one of the IT staff at Ridgefield. Victoria just held an all-hands meeting. Told everyone you were fired for breach of company loyalty. People aren't buying it. There's a lot of unease. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't care, but because I finally didn't need their validation. Instead, I poured a glass of wine, took a deep breath, and signed the offer letter. I wasn't leaving Ridgefield out of bitterness. I was stepping into Easton because I had finally chosen myself. The next morning, I emailed the signed contract back to Darren and copied HR. Within minutes, a response came in. "Welcome to the team." And just like that, I wasn't adrift anymore. I had direction, a role, a new future. Still, the emotional whiplash lingered. 6 years of dedication had ended with a security escort. But in 24 hours, I had landed on my feet, stronger than ever. Not because of luck, but because of preparation, performance, and persistence. Later that evening, I sat on my apartment balcony, watching the city lights flicker into life. I wasn't thinking about Ridgefield or Victoria Mercer. I was thinking about Monday, the first day of a job that didn't just reward my skills, but restored my dignity. I would walk into Easton Co, not as someone who had been let go, but as someone who had let go of small thinking, of toxic loyalty, and of the belief that you had to suffer to succeed. Because now I knew better. It started with an unfamiliar number lighting up my phone the morning after I signed Easton's offer letter. "Jordan Blake?" the voice on the other end asked, clipped and professional. "Yes, speaking." "This is Marianne Fletcher. I serve on the board at Ridgefield Strategies. I understand there was an incident yesterday regarding your employment. I'd like to meet with you in person to discuss it." For a moment, I said nothing. My chest tightened, but not with fear, with clarity. This wasn't concern. They were doing damage control. "I appreciate the call, Miss Fletcher," I replied calmly, "but I've already accepted another position." A pause followed. "May I ask with which firm?" "I'd prefer not to share that information at this time," I said. There was no reason to give Ridgefield a head start on speculating or scrambling. Marianne's tone shifted slightly, a hint of urgency creeping in. "If this is about compensation, I'm certain we can revisit those conversations. The board values your contributions, Jordan. We were not aware of the pattern of denied requests." I nearly laughed. For 3 years, I'd submitted carefully documented performance reviews, client letters, revenue reports, each time met with polite dismissal. Now, suddenly, I was a person of value? "It's not just about compensation," I said, my voice level. "It's about respect and timing." There was another pause. "Would you consider meeting us in person? Tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., even if just for closure?" I hesitated. I had no intention of returning, but closure on my terms had a certain appeal. "I'll be there," I said. "But to be clear, I'm not negotiating a return." The next day, walking into Ridgefield as a visitor felt surreal. Jessica, the receptionist, widened her eyes when she saw me. "You're here for the meeting with Ms. Fletcher?" "Yes," I said, signing the visitor log. Her voice dropped slightly. "For what it's worth, everyone's talking about how wrong this was. You were the best of us." That warmed something in me, quiet gratitude. When I entered the boardroom, Marianne Fletcher was already seated. Early 60s, composed, with the quiet authority of someone used to signing off on million-dollar contracts before lunch. She stood to shake my hand. "Thank you for coming," she said. "Please sit." A slim folder lay open in front of her. She tapped it once before speaking. "I reviewed your file. 6 years of spotless performance, major account growth, and 3 formal compensation requests. All denied." She looked up. "I was not aware of this pattern. Our VP, Ms. Mercer, has been operating with more autonomy than I find comfortable." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. What I don't see, she continued, is any documentation justifying your termination. There's no policy against exploring opportunities. The word used, disloyal, is subjective. I nodded. It was meant to wound, and it did. But it also woke me up. Marianne folded her hands. I'll be direct. The board would like to offer you reinstatement with the title of Senior Account Director, a 10% raise above your last request, and a signing bonus equal to 3 months' salary. It was the best offer Ridgefield had ever made to me, and it was 3 years too late. That's a generous offer, I said sincerely, but as I mentioned on the phone, I've already accepted a position elsewhere. At Easton Company? She asked bluntly. I didn't confirm. I didn't have to. Her eyes said it all. Victoria is concerned, Marianne admitted. Easton represents a major portion of our annual revenue. Losing them would be catastrophic. There it was. The real reason. Not regret for how I'd been treated. Fear of losing what I had built. That's a question for Easton, I said carefully. She nodded, clearly understanding I wouldn't be baited into pettiness. One last question, she said. What could Ridgefield have done differently? I paused, then met her gaze. Recognize my value before I had to look elsewhere to find it, I replied. Loyalty is a two-way street. Ridgefield expected devotion while offering indifference. That imbalance wasn't sustainable. Marianne said nothing at first. Then she extended her hand again. Thank you for your candor. I wish you well. I stood, shook her hand, and walked out for the last time. This time, no cardboard box. No security guard. Just me, choosing my ending. I didn't leave Ridgefield in disgrace. I left with dignity, because I knew what I was worth. And finally, so did they. My first day at Easton Company felt like the beginning of something clean, something earned. There was no awkward HR orientation, no badge photos under flickering lights. Everything had been prepared in advance. My nameplate was already on the glass office door. A welcome basket sat on my desk beside a bouquet of wildflowers and a handwritten note from Darren. We're glad you're here, Jordan. Let's build something extraordinary. At 9 a.m., Darren stopped by with a few senior team members and introduced me to the 5-person department I'd now be leading. Marketing specialists, client liaisons, creative strategists, all bright, motivated, and eager. Their respect was immediate, and not because of my title. They had heard the story. By 10:30, I was called into a meeting with Easton's executive team. No surprises, just transparency. Our contract with Ridgefield is up for renewal next month, said the CFO. Given the recent events, we're reevaluating all agency partnerships. We value your perspective, added the CMO. You've worked with Ridgefield for years. You know their processes and their gaps. I knew what they were asking, even if they didn't say it outright. I could have burned Ridgefield down with a sentence. After what they did to me, no one would have blamed me. But I wasn't here to get revenge. I was here to lead. I think Ridgefield should be evaluated like any other agency, I said carefully. Their campaign performance has been solid, but account consistency and responsiveness will need to improve to stay competitive. It was a diplomatic answer, and a powerful one. The room nodded in agreement. I had recused myself from the final vote, but the writing was already on the wall. 3 days later, Easton's leadership finalized the decision. The email went out at 11 a.m. on Wednesday, exactly 1 week after I was escorted out of Ridgefield's building. It was short, direct, and devastating. After careful review, Easton Company will transition our marketing services to Meridian Creative, effective immediately. We appreciate our years of partnership with Ridgefield Strategies and wish them well in future endeavors. All campaign assets must be transferred by Friday close of business. Transition will be managed by our new Director of Client Strategy, Jordan Blake. I read the message twice, then closed my laptop. I didn't smile. I didn't toast to poetic justice. I simply got to work. By noon, my inbox was full. Panicked emails from Ridgefield staff, requests for asset access, strained politeness barely covering the chaos I imagined was erupting on the 14th floor of their building. I handled every message with clarity and grace, because the truth was, I didn't need Ridgefield to collapse. I just needed to walk away from it with my self-respect intact. And now, with their largest client in my hands, I had done exactly that. That afternoon, Jessica from Ridgefield, the receptionist, sent me a LinkedIn request with a short message. Everyone's in shock. Victoria's been in closed-door meetings all day. 3 other managers have updated their resumes. Karma moves fast. Wishing you the best. You deserve it. I accepted her request, replying only, "Thank you for your kindness. Wishing you the best." The power wasn't in the email, the job title, or even the transition. The power was in my restraint. I didn't need to destroy Ridgefield. I had simply become too good for them to keep, and they were the last to realize it. Sometimes the best revenge isn't loud or dramatic. Sometimes the best revenge is rising so quietly, they don't even hear you leave. Jordan's journey is a powerful reminder that loyalty, while admirable, should never come at the cost of your self-worth. Many of us, especially those from older generations, were taught to stay loyal, to work hard, and wait patiently for recognition. But sometimes that recognition never comes. Sometimes those in power grow too comfortable with your silence, assuming you'll accept less because you always have. The deeper lesson here is that quiet endurance is not the same as respect. You can give years of your life to a job, a company, or even a relationship, and still be discarded the moment you become inconvenient. But self-worth isn't something others can give or take. It's something you must protect, especially when it's being ignored. Jordan didn't seek revenge. She sought dignity. She left not with bitterness, but with clarity. And in doing so, she found something far more valuable than a paycheck. She found her voice. So ask yourself, are you staying where you're valued or where you're simply tolerated? At any age, it's never too late to choose the path that honors your worth.